Hannah Myers lived with her young son Noah in a modest house on the outskirts of a small town in Georgia. After a tense and painful divorce, she had moved there to start over, seeking a life that was quieter, simpler, and above all, safer for her child. Working from home as a freelance graphic designer, Hannah spent nearly all her time with Noah. At just 18 months old, he was her joy, her entire world. But like every single mother, Hannah had her quiet moments, those late hours when the weight of doing everything alone pressed down on her, being both mother and father, protector and provider for a fragile little life. Noah was an energetic, bright toddler with a strange fondness for animals. He often hugged stuffed animals, pointed at dog stickers, and called them friend. Even though he was still a baby, his eyes would light up every time a dog passed by on the street. That look in his eyes made Hannah consider something she hadn't before getting a dog. Not just to add a member to the family, but to give Noah a real companion, a creature that could love him, protect him, and be with him like a destined friend. But getting a dog with a toddler wasn't a simple decision. Friends and neighbors advised her to get a well-bred puppy, something trainable and gentle with kids. But Hannah's instincts pointed elsewhere. She didn't want a perfect dog. She wanted a buck who needed love just like she and her son did. So she went to the local rescue shelter in search of a dog no one else wanted. And that's when she first met Max. Max was a large German shepherd sitting silently in the corner of his kennel. He didn't make eye contact, didn't wag his tail like the other dogs trying desperately to be noticed. When Hannah approached, Max didn't move closer, didn't whimper, didn't flinch. He simply looked an exhausted, deep gaze that spoke of years of pain and betrayal. The shelter staff told her that Max had been trained by a previous owner to be a guard dog, but he had been severely abused. He arrived at the shelter underweight with an old scar running down his back and a lingering injury on his front leg. "He's never bitten anyone," the staff member explained, "but he doesn't trust anyone either. We're not sure how well he'll do with a small child." But when Hannah brought Noah close to the cage, something changed. For the first time, Max lifted his head. His ears twitched, and his eyes lost a bit of their emptiness. He stood up slowly and approached the bars, stopping right in front of Noah. He didn't bark, he didn't jump, he didn't lick. He just looked with an expression that could only be described as protective. Something tightened in Hannah's chest. "He's not perfect," she whispered. "But neither is my son. Neither am I. Maybe we'll heal each other." Despite the dozens of reasons she had to walk away, Hannah signed the adoption papers that very day. What she didn't know was that just a few days later, that decision would determine her son's fate in a way she never could have imagined. Bringing Max home was nothing like what Hannah had imagined. There was no joyful welcome, no wildly wagging tail. As he stepped into his new home, Max didn't run around like most dogs might. Instead, he stood silently at the threshold, eyes scanning the room, quietly observing everything, assessing whether this place was truly safe or just another nightmare in disguise. Hannah had prepared everything meticulously: a soft dog bed by the window, stainless steel food bowls, chew toys, rubber bones, even fluffy towels that smelled of fresh laundry. But Max showed no interest in any of it. He walked slowly, each step careful and deliberate, as if he were memorizing every corner of the house, not out of curiosity, but like a survivor of a home where at any moment a shout, a strike, or a locked door could come without warning. Noah, however, was completely different. The moment Max walked in, the toddler burst out laughing, waving his tiny arms and shouting, "Doggy, doggy!" as he toddled over. Hannah rushed forward, worried Max might react badly. But Max simply paused, sank into a sitting position, and lowered his head, letting Noah pat him gently on the back. No growl, no flinch, just stillness, perhaps even acceptance. In those early days, Hannah kept her distance. She never left Max and Noah alone, always watching closely. If Noah moved toward Max, she was ready to intervene. But Max hardly ever took his eyes off Noah. He didn't move around much, but his gaze followed the child everywhere like a silent guardian. Anytime there was a strange noise like a reversing truck or a crack of thunder, Max would immediately lift his head, ears alert, body tense, placing himself between Noah and the door, while the boy kept playing blissfully unaware. At night, Max didn't sleep on his bed, nor did he return to the spot Hannah had prepared for him. Instead, he lay in the hallway right between Hannah's bedroom and Noah's. One night, Hannah woke at 2 a.m. to the sound of the wind. She walked out and found Max sitting upright in the dark, eyes fixed on the window like a soldier keeping watch. Noah grew increasingly attached to Max. The toddler started offering him bits of food, placing his hand gently on Max's head, mumbling baby talk only a child could invent. And Max would stay quiet as though listening to a language that only the wounded truly understand. Then Hannah started to notice something remarkable. Max wasn't just present, he was protecting. Once when a delivery man arrived and Noah was playing near the door, Max instinctively stood in front of the child. He didn't bark or growl, just stared at the stranger with a quiet but unmistakable warning in his eyes. The moment Hannah came out to sign the receipt, Max backed away almost as if to say, "She's the mother here." Hannah began to trust Max. Not blindly, but in a way that was built slowly through glances, through actions, through unspoken understanding. She remained cautious. Max's past couldn't be erased overnight, but something inside her softened. Maybe she thought Max wasn't just here to be cared for. Maybe he had chosen them. No one said it out loud, but something in that little house had changed. It wasn't just about gaining a four-legged family member. It was about safety, a quiet bond forming beneath the surface like three hearts, a mother, a child, and a once broken dog learning to beat in sync. That afternoon began like any other peaceful day. The sky was painted a perfect blue, not a single cloud in sight. A gentle breeze stirred the air. The sun was soft and Noah's laughter echoed through the backyard like a song of happiness. Hannah had just turned on the dishwasher and was preparing a bottle for her son. She smiled as she glanced out the kitchen window, the same window where she often watched Noah and Max play together. The image of her blonde-haired boy toddling beside their large dog filled her with a strange, calming sense of safety. Noah was clutching his red ball, his favorite toy, wobbling across the grass with his unsteady toddler steps. Max walked beside him, slow and steady, like a bodyguard trailing a tiny prince. Everything was perfect, until something in the scene shifted, subtle like a heartbeat gone out of rhythm, but enough for Hannah to feel it. Max was no longer walking leisurely. His body tensed, ears folded back, head lowered into a stance that looked ready to strike. In a sudden flash, Max charged at Noah with lightning speed, then slammed into the child with his shoulder, knocking Noah to the ground where he lay motionless. Hannah froze. The bottle slipped from her hand, shattering in the sink. Her heart clenched like it had been grabbed by an invisible fist. She screamed, her voice cracking in panic, "Max, stop!" But the nightmare didn't end there. Before Hannah could reach the door, Max had already grabbed the waistband of Noah's diaper. In his jaws, lifted the boy effortlessly and hurled him across the yard like a rag doll. Noah tumbled across the grass and lay still. Hannah's scream tore through the air. She bolted through the back door, legs trembling, her heartbeat roaring in her ears like a war drum. What she saw was every mother's worst fear, her child lying limp on the grass, and Max standing nearby, shaking, foaming at the mouth, his eyes sunken with a look of desperation. Every fear she'd ever buried came rushing in at once. I was wrong to trust him. He snapped. His past has caught up with him, and I left my child alone with him. Her knees buckled as she reached Noah. She rolled him over, voice breaking, "Noah! Noah, wake up, baby." There was no blood, no bite marks, just a few small scrapes, a faint scratch on his cheek, and his shirt dirtied by grass. Noah's eyes fluttered open and he exhaled softly. He was still alive. Relief flooded her for a fleeting moment until something else yanked her back to reality. Max. He had collapsed onto the lawn, front leg curled tightly, drool pouring from his mouth, body trembling in waves. Hannah turned her head, and that's when she saw what she had missed before a slithering shape, red, yellow, and black, disappearing behind a bush. A coral snake, one of the most venomous snakes in North America, had just left the scene. A chill shot through Hannah's spine. Now she understood. Max hadn't gone mad. Max had saved Noah. The charge, the shove, the throw, every move had been made to get Noah away from danger. And now Max was paying for it with his life because he had chosen to act first. She pulled Noah tightly into her arms, tears streaming down her face. Max, I doubted you. I was afraid of you. But you did nothing wrong. In that moment, Max was no longer just a rescue dog. He was a hero. The shock in Hannah's chest hadn't even settled when she dropped to her knees beside Max. The giant dog lay still, his body trembling in waves. Froth pooled at the corners of his mouth, his eyes half closed, and his breathing came in ragged bursts like wind rustling through trees. His front leg was curled tight, the ankle swelling abnormally, the skin turning a deep purplish black. Hannah could hardly believe what she was seeing. Then she glanced toward the patch of grass nearby where Max had just fought. The cursed creature was still slithering away. A coral snake, its vibrant bands of red, black, and yellow twisted like a living ribbon. In her mind, Hannah could hear the old warning that every Southern parent knew by heart. Red on yellow, kill a fellow. This wasn't a harmless snake. This was one of the most venomous snakes in North America. And in situations like this, a single bite could mean the end. For a brief moment, everything rewound in Hannah's mind like a film playing in reverse. Max's tense eyes, the powerful shove that sent Noah flying, the nudge with his snout, and finally the terrifying grab and toss. Every action, which had seemed insane at the time, now stood out as a clear, undeniable display of courage. Max hadn't attacked Noah. Max had risked his life to stop death in its tracks. He had reacted the moment he sensed danger shielding Noah, pushing him out of reach of the strike zone. And in the end, he had taken the bite himself. No hesitation, no command, just instinct and love. Hannah's heart clenched. She remembered the sheer panic, the fear, the fury she'd felt just minutes before, the way she had screamed at Max, accused him, feared him, and almost let that fear kill a hero. "Oh, Max," she whispered, choking back tears, sinking beside him and placing a trembling hand on his back. His body radiated heat, unnatural burning, like a fire raging inside. He didn't open his eyes. He just breathed, slower and slower. "You didn't do anything wrong. You were protecting him. You saved my son's life." Hannah looked over at Noah, who was now sitting on the grass, dazed, his little hands clutching his red ball. His eyes were glassy with confusion, not quite understanding what had happened, but filled with innocent concern as he gazed at Max. "He's too little. He doesn't know what you just did, but I do, and I owe you everything." Tears finally spilled from Hannah's eyes, not just out of fear, but out of shame. Shame for not trusting Max. Shame for letting his past shape the way she saw him. She had read dozens of articles about dogs attacking children, had been warned by so many people, and without realizing it, she had let those fears take root. She had let them blind her to the truth Max had shown her every day. But there was no more time for regret. She had to act, and fast. "Okay, Max, don't give up on me," Hannah whispered, wiping her tears. Her voice shifted, firmer, now focused. "You saved Noah. Now it's my turn to save you." She took a deep breath. She picked Noah up and placed him gently on the picnic blanket in the shaded corner of the yard. Then she ran into the house, searching for her phone, a towel, the car keys. Her hands trembled as she dialed the emergency vet. And in her mind, just one sentence echoed again and again: "Don't let a hero die alone." There was no time to hesitate. Hannah placed Noah into his car seat, then rushed back to Max. The large dog lay limp on the grass, his body burning hot, his breathing heavier by the second. His front leg had swollen so badly it was almost deformed. Foam still clung to his mouth and his entire body trembled in faint spasms. Max's eyes were half open but distant, like he was clinging to the last thread of consciousness. "Hang on, Max," Hannah whispered, her mind spinning. "You saved my son. Now it's my turn to save you." She grabbed a large towel and had wrapped it around Max's body. He weighed nearly 40 kilograms, but Hannah didn't feel it. Adrenaline surged through her like an electric current, making her trembling arms stronger than ever. She pulled and lifted inch by inch using her knees, elbows, and raw determination to haul Max into the back of the SUV. Sweat dotted her forehead. Her heart thundered in her chest. She slammed the trunk shut and jumped into the driver's seat. No shoes, no purse, no GPS. There was only one mission in her mind, the emergency vet clinic 15 minutes away. She slammed the gas pedal. The car sped forward. She didn't care about red lights, didn't count how many speed limits she broke. Every road sign, every rule, every caution vanished in the whirlwind panic of a mother fighting to save the life of a creature she once doubted. "Hold on, Max," she murmured, almost a prayer. "You can't die. You won't die." Noah sat quietly in the back, strangely still, as if he too could sense the gravity of the moment. Hannah drove with one eye flicking toward the rearview mirror or toward the back of the SUV, where Max lay motionless, wrapped in the towel, the bite mark on his leg now stained black. 15 minutes felt like a lifetime. Every second was another drop of life draining from Max's body. When she finally pulled into the vet clinic parking lot, she hit the brakes so hard the tires screeched on the pavement. She flung open the car door and shouted, "Help me! Snake bite, my dog is dying." A vet tech was already waiting and ran toward the vehicle. One glance at the swollen, discolored leg was all he needed. "We need fluids, anti-venom now," he yelled to his team. There was no time to speak. They hoisted Max onto a stretcher and rushed him inside just like they would a critically injured human. The clinic doors swung shut, and Hannah stood frozen in the hallway, sweat tears and dust blurring together on her face. She collapsed onto a bench, her heart still racing, gripping her phone like it was the last thread tying her to hope. She couldn't even remember the last time she prayed. But now there was only one plea repeating in her mind. "Please let Max live, not just for me, but for Noah, for a hero who doesn't deserve to die like this." Sometime later, a doctor came out, eyes serious but not hopeless. "We've administered the anti-venom," he said. "But," he paused, "he's weak, very weak. The initial response is unclear. We'll need to monitor him for at least 12 hours. This is the critical window." That was all. No promises, no guarantees. Hannah nodded, feeling like she was drowning. She left the clinic with her heart twisted in knots, Noah asleep in her arms, and one question pounding in her chest. Would she still see Max alive when the morning came? Hannah sat motionless on the cold, hard bench in the veterinary clinic's waiting room. The door where Max had just been taken had shut tight behind her, cutting her off from the foe she had just hours ago believed might be attacking her son. Now every passing second felt like a knife twisting deeper into her chest. She couldn't sit still, but her legs trembled when she tried to stand. She couldn't cry aloud, but the tears poured endlessly down her face. She had never felt so small, so helpless. Next to her, Noah had fallen asleep on the bench, his head resting on her thigh arms, still clutching his dirt-streaked red ball. His cheeks were flushed from the sun, his lips moving slightly in a dream. In the silence that surrounded them, his soft, steady breaths were a gentle reminder Noah was alive because of Max. Hannah bowed her head, one hand gently stroking her son's hair, the other clutching her phone as if waiting for a call that could change everything. She had no idea how much time had passed. Time had lost all meaning. Only one thought circled through her mind over and over. What if? What if she hadn't doubted Max? What if she had looked more closely, seen the warning in his eyes instead of mistaking it for aggression? What if she hadn't let old fears cloud the truth standing right in front of her? Every time she replayed the moment, Max knocked Noah over, then flung him away with his jaws. Her heart clenched painfully. In that moment, she had seen a monster. Now she saw clearly every move Max made had been a desperate attempt to save Noah from death. Not a second of hesitation, not a moment of fear. Max had chosen to act, to protect, and now he might be dying because he chose to believe in her. She had lost count of how many times she checked her phone screen. She had called her mother just in case someone needed to watch Noah. She had called the vet clinic once only to be told, "No change yet. We're monitoring him closely." That was all. She nodded even as her heart screamed. Near midnight, after taking Noah home, Hannah didn't turn on the lights. She gently laid him in bed, wrapped him in his blanket, then sat down beside him, her chin resting in her palm, eyes staring into nothingness. In the dim glow of the nightlight, Noah's peaceful face lit up, safe, unaware that his life had nearly been lost to a silent strike from a deadly snake. Hannah pulled a chair close to the bed, rested her head on the edge, and placed a hand over her chest. She could feel her heart pounding like a drum warning her. But this time she wasn't afraid of Max. She was afraid of losing him. She whispered softly as if confessing to the darkness, "You didn't just save my son, Max. You saved me. You reminded me of something I had forgotten, how to believe in the good inside the broken." She felt so small compared to Max's unwavering loyalty. A dog who had been hurt, abandoned, forgotten by humans. And yet when the moment came, chose to act for a child he'd only known for a few days. The sky began to lighten. And then her phone buzzed. Hannah jolted, heart stopping for a split second. She swiped the screen, her voice trembling. "Hello." It was the vet's voice. "We wanted you to know, Max has stabilized. He made it through the critical stage. You can come pick him up this morning." Hannah broke down in tears, not from fear but from relief, gratitude, and redemption. Max had lived. The hero hadn't died. He was coming home. And this time Hannah knew she would never look at him the same way again. The next morning, as Hannah drove to the veterinary clinic, her hands were still trembling slightly. But this time it wasn't from fear. It was from hope. Hope that the moment of reunion would wash away the doubts, regrets, and pains she and Max had been through together. As the automatic doors opened, she saw Max immediately. The large dog lay on a padded mat near the entrance, his front leg wrapped in thick bandages, the fur around it shaved for treatment. His body looked thinner, weaker, but his eyes, those eyes were the same, calm, loyal, and peaceful. When Max saw Hannah, he didn't bark, didn't try to get up. He simply lowered his ears gently and wagged his tail. Once, just once, but it was enough to make the whole world pause. We rarely see a dog respond so strongly to a venomous bite, the vet said. If you'd arrived 10 minutes later, he wouldn't have made it. Your reaction saved him. And his reaction saved your son. Hannah couldn't find words. She simply knelt down and gently stroked Max's head. "Let's go home, my hero," she whispered. When they returned home, the sun had just passed noon. Light spilled across the porch like golden silk. Hannah opened the door and carefully carried Max across the threshold like carrying a soldier home from battle. Inside, Noah was playing with wooden blocks. The moment he saw Max, he shouted, "Whoa!" And then he ran. Max, though still weak, immediately lowered himself to the floor, allowing Noah to throw his arms around his neck just like always. But this time it wasn't playtime. It was a reunion between two souls who had crossed the fragile line between life and death and made it back together. Hannah stood silently in the doorway, her hand covering her mouth, her heart overflowing. Everything she had feared, every assumption she had ever made about Max, was now just the shadow of a mother who had once been too haunted by what could go wrong and failed to see what was already right. She knelt beside them and placed a gentle hand on Max's back. "I was afraid of you," she whispered. "But you were never afraid." That night, Hannah spread out a large blanket on the floor beside Noah's bed. Max lay there, and Noah lay beside him, his head resting on Max's side like a living pillow. Hannah turned off the lights, leaving only the soft glow of the nightlight. No one said anything they didn't need to. In that quiet room, three beings, a mother, once broken, a child too young to understand, and a dog once wounded, had finally found each other. The next day, the story spread across the neighborhood. Then it reached social media. Then the press started calling. People called Max a brave dog, a four-legged hero, and a miracle survivor. But to Hannah, Max didn't need titles, because what moved her most wasn't that Max had saved Noah's life, it was that he had dared to trust humans again. Despite being betrayed, abandoned, and hurt when faced with death, Max didn't run. He acted, not out of instinct, not because he was trained, but because of love. That night before bed, Hannah leaned down and whispered to Max, "You didn't just save my son, you saved me too. You taught me how to believe again." And Max, still weak, still silent, just wagged his tail once more. Slowly, fully, and that was enough.